Welcome to Disrupt You. This is the show where we'll hear what changes are headed to colleges and universities in all departments. We'll learn what innovation really means in higher education.
Welcome to Disrupt You. How are you doing this week? We've got a special guest and I'm excited. Are you excited, Dustin?
You know what? Not Dustin. Today I am Mike Schilt. For those who don't know, Mike Schilt is the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals, and the two amazing professionals that I'm with today are huge Cardinals fan. I don't know much about the Cardinals, but I know it was going to make both of them upset. So how are we feeling about those Cardinals? Are they starting vacation early? Are they going to the World Series? What's happening?
I mean, I told you not to bring this up, number one. Number two, if you're Mike Schilt, I ain't mad at the Cardinals. I'm mad at you. I'm mad at you. All of my energy is focused on you. So I hope you packed a big bag for LA because you don't need to be coming home. Okay?
Okay, fantastic. I tried to get the energy, moving to begin this episode. I'm excited for this episode. We got something special for you. So first, we have a special guest. All of you longtime Disrupt You listeners will recognize this voice. But for anyone who's new to the show, as you know, we go through new co-hosts every season, and the second season co-host Taylor Bell is back with us. Taylor, for those.
What's up, guys? It's Taylor Bell. I'm back. This is your nap-loving, education-seeking, probably going to forget that you asked me for a favor, friend, but I'm going to do it, though. What's up, guys?
Hey. So I'm excited. This is going to be a unique episode. So, Erin, Taylor, I've got three hard-hitting, trending topics in higher education. Both Erin and Taylor do not know what the topics are. They have no idea whatsoever. I'm going to hit them with each one by one. We'll spend about 8 minutes on each one, but I want to get the genuine, off-the-cuff, hot takes on these three topics. You both feel down for it?
I'm down. I'm nervous. There's no research. I don't know if I can Google that fast. I'm nervous.
All right. Speed round. Okay.
Taylor's going first, right? I gotta get my Google fingers ready.
All right. These are big topics.
Okay.
Hit me.
First topic, endowments. I'm going to give you some background. During the last fiscal year, the median return on U.S. colleges for the last fiscal year was up 27%. If you had an endowment over $500 million as a university, you are up 34% in that endowment. That brings up a conversation of when everyone's not maybe doing as well financially and tuition's going through the roof and there's issues with diversity, inclusion within universities, but the universities are cashing in on these endowments, hand over fist on these endowments. What do you say? One thing that's going on recently, I'll give you this, Washington University here in St. Louis has seen this. There's a lot of public backlash on universities taking all this money, and what are they doing with the Washington University, University of Washington here in St. Louis? They are starting a need-blind admissions process where they're putting $1 billion with a B, $1 billion into financial aid in a need-blind admissions, in the sense that they will not take into a context what if you need financial aid or not. They're putting $1 billion into this to try to support this. So my question for you two, what are you thinking about this huge moneymaker that is endowments and some universities not using it for the good cause? What do you say?
So first of all, my mind is blown. I told you I was going to Google, y'all. So I just looked at the list of the top endowments and I found WashU. So the whole time that Dustin was talking about this, I literally was like in my brain, like, oh my goodness, $15 billion. They have $15 billion in endowment. They're going to use the $1 billion, use $6 billion. Like what? That's insane. And they're going to use just like, what's another one? Like Santa Clara University in California only has a $1 billion endowment. My mind is just blown. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. What needs to happen? Do we need to force them? What do you think?
So what are their parameters for this, for giving out this money? I need to know more about that.
So what WashU is doing, so basically what we're seeing publicly is a lot of people are just upset. They're looking at all this public data came out of how much money they're making off their endowment. People are upset. So, WashU could have been doing this beforehand, not saying they're reacting, but one great thing they're doing, they're one of the few universities saying, we're going to spend that endowment interest. We're making a lot of money on interest off that endowment. So what they're going to do is say $1 billion. They're going to say, we're going to support students with financial aid interest, and looking at admissions rate specifically, not looking at who needs financial aid, who doesn't need a financial aid, in the sense that the majority of students who go to WashU do not need financial aid. That is just public data. The majority of students that go to WashU don't need it. So if you take a need blind approach, it's saying you're not worried about, are they paying for it or will they need support? You're saying, we're just going to admit blindly, not even looking at that stuff. And if you need financial support, we got you, right? We've got $1 billion to support you if you need it be.
Okay. So they're giving out the money based on financial need.
If you get it, yep, absolutely.
Right. Okay. I thought you meant they were just giving out money to anyone regardless of financial aid. I get it. They're admitting based on that. I mean, I think that's good, but why weren't they doing it before? Like, why is it taking this uproar? I mean, I'm so glad they're doing it. That's good. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I think it's hard for us to continue to say we're nonprofit when you've got $15 billion in the bank.
Here's my question for both of you.
Right?
My question for both of you: should government step in and say you legally have to spend 25% of your earned endowment interest every year on scholarships or something else?
That's like really heavy, Dustin. Like
really heavy.
I just need to say this in a tasteful way. Like, I don't always believe that government intervention is the most beneficial solution for any problem. And so for them to step in and dictate what happens with these endowments, like on the surface, it sounds really good, right? Because then you can make sure that people that need the aid, there's enough of this abundance of funding to allocate to them. However, what if there are other things that, like, you don't have 25% of students worth of your endowment asking for aid, but you still have that allocated to them? What if that money could have gone to something else that would have then still benefited students or your institution? So I think bringing the government in adds a new wrench, especially when you're putting like that cap on it, like it has to be 25. I think that might be a little too stringent. Like, there's so much risk involved with using endowments, and like, since it's such a long-term game, I think that universities need to remain comfortable in using that funding for students, like for financial aid. And I think that government interaction may put a damper on that.
Yeah, I think it's hard too, because we're talking a $15 billion endowment, and the reality is that's not the norm. I mean, yes, there's a whole list of these endowments, but there's a lot of schools that their endowment is, in the lower millions, like, I mean, that still sounds like a lot of money, but those are for maybe different projects, different campaigns, different. So to say 25%, that could be a huge chunk of your endowment. Which I get when we're talking about 15 billion, like my brain, at least, I can't wrap my brain around that number. And so it's hard for me to even say, well, what's the difference between, like, okay, if we took 25%, like there's no difference between 11 billion and, 15 billion in my brain, right? There is in real dollars, obviously. But I think a mandate like that is going to end up hurting more institutions than what we're talking about now, which is this list of in the billions. There's a lot of institutions that just aren't there with their endowment.
Absolutely. In full transparency, I'm 100% for it, and big on a base process, just like us as individuals If you make under $50,000 a year, you pay less interest. If you make over $200,000, you pay more interest. So a staggered approach, but man, this interest these schools are making, they could be changing lives. Harvard has openly said that they could admit more students and not drop the quality of their education. Man, we gotta force their hand sometimes. Okay, second topic for you, blind topic. At the close of 2021, at the close of the 21 academic year, women made up 60% of college students, an all-time high. Men made up 40%, according to enrollment data from National Student Clearinghouse, a nonprofit research group. U.S. colleges and universities throughout the pandemic had 1.5 million fewer students compared with 5 years ago. We had a huge decrease, 1.5 million less students. And of that 1.5 million students, men accounted for 71% of that 1.5. 71% was 1.5. So here's my question. What attention should this get? Where we're saying we're on one side, we're doing a great job and we're supporting diversity, inclusion within our universities, our colleges. Are we overlooking? Are we making with anecdotally interviews, men at universities are saying they don't feel welcome, they don't feel their place at colleges nationally? What should we be thinking about when we have this conversation?
First of all, I want to point out my elephant in the room with this is that it's been that less men are at college for a long time, and yet men are still making more money than women. So I don't know what that means. Maybe men don't, I don't know what that means on the scale, but that still, it seems very weird, right? Like and especially when you start looking at terminal degrees, like in the PhD realm, not professional degrees, the skew of women is so high. And yet again, we see more men in leadership. We see more men, like higher salaries. Like, so I'm still like very perplexed by this. And I don't know what this means on a whole social scale, but that's like my elephant of like, oh my gosh, there's less men going to college, and yet there's still this giant wage gap. So what does that mean on both sides of that? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. My immediate thought was like, okay, well, are there less men in jobs? Because if not, then okay, yeah, sure. Bring the men, don't bring the men. I feel like this is probably like feels super feminist, but I feel like men have like societally a different, like they're perceived differently than women are. And so like Erin was saying, men are going to college less historically. They're still getting these jobs and making more money than us historically. So how should we be looking at this? We should probably actually be looking at the fact that these numbers dictate that women are still making less money, even though we're going to college more. And why did less women participate during the pandemic? I mean, there's tons of things that you could think of, right? Like a lot of people had to be at home with their kids. And if their kids weren't home, I would assume that in many households, the woman was the person that was staying home, whether she was working from home or not, right? Once we shut down, if you couldn't go to work or if you had to work from home, you had to deal with whoever else was in the home as well, which would have made it very hard to manage doing some higher education during that time. So I don't know if those numbers are really indicative of something that, for me, creates the need for a deep dive.
Okay, let me take the other side. Let me take the other side, where I do see historically, if these are very new numbers, this is a very trending topic of the dramatic fall of men going to college. And yeah, if looking at 20 years out, we could see some dramatic changes in the workplace, but just in higher education, right? Not workplace. We take that completely out of the case. We're just talking about higher ed. I think we can all agree that the more educated people in the world, the better, right? The more educated, the less violence, especially men tend to be more violent than the women in the US. Specifically, lonely men, the less educated you are, the more failed relationships you're in, therefore more violence. So just from an educational standpoint, I get what you're saying about wage gaps, and yes, state is there, right? There's at 30, that's a lot of our national data is showing at the age of 30, that's when that gap continues of age gap, or of income gap in the US. But just education, though, we're not talking about, how much you're making, just simply education. You're going to be a better person, less violent person, better relationships, better for your community, the more educated you are. Don't we want those men to be educated, to be part of their community, to have better relationships, to be less violent, to do these things?
I need more in this data. Like I need to understand the age. I need to understand demographics about, like one thing is we just got less 18-year-olds. So lots of schools are recruiting more adult students. Well, again, if you go back to this gender inequality, we start talking about people in their mid 30s and 40s going back to school. That's making up a huge number in who is coming to college right now, right? Less 18-year-olds. So we've got to hit a different market as a whole in the industry. Well, guess what? The men are getting promoted and the women aren't. And so women are going back to school. So again, I need to see, I need to break down this data, because at the heart of it, and maybe that's because I'm a woman, so I'm looking at this from my own lens, but the heart of it, I still feel like this is a bigger societal issue of how we are paying and promoting women versus men in this country. But I'm not saying men shouldn't come to college. I mean, that's not my point. And again, I need to look at what demographic of men is in this decline of those 71%. Was it men in their mid careers? Was it Black men? Because we do know statistically Black men, we struggle with getting them through college. That's a real concern. Is it men with low EFC? Is it men with high EFC? I need to know more about these men, and to be able to dissect this more. I think that's where I'm at.
No, I agree, because I also feel like the data doesn't consider a lot of things that need to be considered, like non-binary people, gender fluid people. How is this? They're men and women, people that identify as men or women are not the only people coming to college. And yeah, you may have to check a box, but that's still not going to indicate to consumers of this data what's actually happening. So yeah, I need more information on the data before I can feel to put it blankly, less feminist about the issue.
So a really good question. I haven't seen data on age. I don't know age. That's a really good point on, is it non-traditional students that make up this case? As far as race, it's white men specifically are not going to college, as that number is dramatically falling. So race-wise, white men are falling at the highest rate. It's not as dramatic. The data isn't, it's not 71% of men are white necessarily, but the gender difference is very different. It's something to keep in mind, that it may be a short term too. Maybe, and no one knows the reason, but during COVID, if we're talking to a traditional aged student, 18-year-old, and parents were hard times as far as their job, maybe they were let go, or issues. Traditionally, historically, a son is more likely to go into the workforce, not go to college, go to the workforce to support the family. Historically, right? That's again the gender biases and gender prejudice that goes behind that, but typically that's what's happening historically. So maybe that could have been the case where an 18-year-old son had to go work to support family. More case, no one really knows, right? But I think it's also one of those topics, right, that's a hard conversation to have. It's one of the optics of this, just not great, right? Because universities, for great reasons, have been pushing, right? And we need more women into STEM. We need more diversity within our university. And we see this number, man, are we going to do something about this? It's tough.
Well, and I would be interested in looking at everything post college, or I'm sorry, everything post K through 12. So higher ed is one option, but there are other options. So we've got military, we've got trade, and typically speaking, those two options are much more male dominated than higher ed. So I'd want to see where are the numbers with military, where are the numbers with trade schools, and how are those relating? Because those are other viable options post K-12 that really do cater more, I would say, to men, or at least attract men more, statistically speaking, than they do females.
Good point. Taylor, do you want the last word before the last topic?
Yeah, I would just say that I want to see the data. Yes, we definitely need everyone going to college. We need men going to college. So please, listeners, don't take that from me and Baz. We want the men in the colleges. But I would also like to point out that we have been concerned about the welfare of men historically in America. And so like, if women are just like doing the thing and being consistent, just let us win. It's okay. Don't think about it too hard.
Okay. Awesome. And then more of the data, man. I feel like I gotta strong up. We gotta support everyone, right, as well. But if you do want to see the data, it is by the National Student Clearinghouse, so it is unbiased data. There's no bias behind this data. So any listener that wants to see more of that data, National Student Clearinghouse did all of this research here recently. And a lot of like Washington Post, New York Times is writing about it this month. So something to look at. Final topic for today. Udemy, great site. Anyone can make their classes. Anyone can make a class on Udemy. Udemy sales from 2019 to 2020 grew from 276 million to 430 million. It was a 55% increase in 1 year. In Udemy sales. So Udemy is looking to have an IPO. They're going through the IPO process right now, where they're going to go public. Udemy. What are your take on this movement of peer-to-peer learning? Does it have a impact on higher education? What they're seeing the most is B2B. The highest player, the most subscriptions are B2B customers they're finding on Udemy. Do they have to go to a college? Do they have to go to university to get a certificate to upskill when Udemy is a fraction of the cost? I just enrolled in a course that's not a university or college. It's a professor who has his own stuff. It's no credits. I registered for it because, man, it is a fraction of the cost. And it's the same professor that I would love to take that professor's class. Fraction of the cost. So what do you think about this Udemy kind of movement, going public, growing in financials? Is it just a short-term thing? Is it a long-term thing? What's your take on this movement?
You want to go? You want me to go?
I like the idea of decentralized education.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of education at your fingertips, but I do not think that replaces the higher education experience in so many ways, like whether that is the traditional degree seeking process, or if it's the actual involvement that you get, whether you're an on-ground or online student, if you're a part of a university community, that's just a different experience than if you are taking one-off courses for certificates, no matter how beneficial or effective they are. So do I think that it replaced higher education, or higher education is in danger? I think if people are thinking of the Udemy type courses in reality, like how they actually exist and help people, then no, it doesn't replace higher education at all. I think it's a wonderful addition that allows people to skill up in places maybe where they didn't have the opportunity, and it's an affordable solution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still think from a job market standpoint, there is still a gate of a required degree. And we don't have to go in today about whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but there's still a lot of jobs out there that will require a bachelor's degree. And the Udemy is not going to replace that requirement. It just isn't. However, I do hear that, like, the upskilling, that, I mean, I think it's great. Like, so much of our job is going to continue to change, especially if you touch technology in your job, which, by the way, most people do. So, if you're in your job and the technology is changing and you want to learn something else that's going to help you get on a project, that's going to help you get a promotion, sign up for this and do it right now. Like, it's super quick. You can just go. It's cheap. You can learn the skill, and then it's like, yeah, people are going to notice that. You're going to be able to participate in that project in a more powerful way. You're going to be able to get noticed at your job. Like, I think upskilling is so important to our career and our career goals. And assuming that what you left college with on that stage is going to be enough to get you through your entire career, I think is a fallacy, right? We have to continue to upskill. So whether that's you go back for a master's degree, you go back for a certificate, you go take a couple of these courses, you go on a LinkedIn Learning, I don't care how you upskill. I think that's a necessity in today's career, like, landscape. And so I think Udemy has a place in that space. I don't think it will help people that are looking to get past that gate wall of the bachelor's degree is required, so I don't know that, if you put on your resume, these are all the Udemy courses I took, even if it was 128 credits of Udemy, I don't think they're going to say yes. I'm not saying I've never taken a Udemy course. Maybe it could be what you would get, but it's not going to give you that. It's not going to give you that ticket. Right. And right now, at least in the job market, we are still that ticket society. You still have to punch that ticket to get that requirement. So we can have a much longer conversation on that. But again, I think this is really an ideal space for like that upskilling.
Okay. Random question for you both. So Taylor, you brought up decentralized. You're right. What about this decentralized education? Hypothetically, what happens when accrediting bodies say, all right, Taylor Bell, you have a class on Udemy that teaches software, right? It's an intro software class. You get accredited. What if you get accredited by the exact same accreditation programs that are accrediting universities just for that one class? Like, you don't get your own college. You just say, for that one class, you get accreditation for that one class. Does that then hold the weight for an employer to say, oh, well, I mean, it's an accredited course. It's not from university, but it's accredited just like the university is accredited. Does that make a change in the employer's mind?
I feel like employers are looking at so many different things now. I mean, like, I know someone who is a vice president of innovation for a huge organization that does not have a college degree, right? It doesn't have to always be that your college degree is the end all be all, or even like what gets your foot in the door. However, like Erin said, there are still going to be a lot of employers that are looking for that traditional degree. And so even having one course or certificate that you really slayed that was accredited is not going to replace that full degree. And so, yeah, that works perfectly if you're the only person that ever applies for the job. Yeah, you're super qualified and they think that this is comparable. But what if you're up against someone who has not only done that same Udemy course, but they have completed a 4-year traditional degree or even a 2-year associate's degree? That education still holds weight. And I that's just how we socially view education in America. And I don't think that that's going to go away.
Yeah. And that's definitely been a shift within our lifetime, I think. I mean, I mean, my dad had a great job and he didn't have a college degree. He had he went to a technical trade school, and yet he made it far in his career, but it changed in our lifetime. The bachelor's degree became this like must have. And I don't want to get in. I mean, I obviously believe in a liberal arts education. I work here. I dedicate my whole life to supporting students through this, but so whether that's right or wrong, it is where we are in this society, I think, right now. And but I do think that the future is shifting. I think that the future is changing to a more decentralized approach, to where employers will value a bachelor's degree still, but will honor other pathways. And I think higher ed has to be aware of that and has to remind themselves that this glory time of the bachelor's degree being the end all be all might not last forever. You know, I keep going back to Blockbuster. Like, we might not always walk into a Blockbuster and experience that. We might stream everything online someday. And Netflix didn't kill Blockbuster. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Blockbuster killed Blockbuster, and higher ed is in that moment. I feel like that they truly have to look around and say, yes, we're in the glory time where employers still want a bachelor's degree. Will that be always? Because of all these options, the Google certificates, the Amazon certificates, the Udemy's, all of that. We just have to keep thinking not now, but ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just where I'm at. So
absolutely. Yeah. At the end of the day, the unpopular thing that we don't like to say in the US, but the US is a caste system. It is a 100% a caste system. It is a caste system based on education. The more education, the more proven education you have, the more money you make, the more promotions you get. Traditionally, on average, statistically, the more you get. The question is, right, just how Bitcoin is crazy, ridiculously high. Where do people put the value? Where do people say that is worth value? That is not worth value. It's interesting to look at future. Hey,
let's go back to question 1. Hold on. Got it.
Oh man, this
question
is not
1.
this off script.
No, this is full.
I don't think you can go back.
Circle.
Okay.
Caste system. No, I'm getting back. Caste system. Education. You said the caste system was built on how much education you have. How do we break the caste system? We let everyone in. We let everyone get educated. Like when we break down the walls, when we start investing our endowment into the poor and into the marginalized populations, guess what? The caste system breaks. That is why Harvard does not want everyone to have their education. At the end of the day, whether that's conscious or unconscious, we are afraid of breaking that caste system down. So we keep the 15 billion in our bank, because if we didn't, everything would change, right?
Erin, what I hear you saying is Harvard's not going to do it. So who's going to force them to do it? The government. And I know Taylor's unhappy with that. I still believe in humans.
Okay. I still believe in humans. And it's hard to believe in humans when you've got people with $15 billion in the bank who won't spend it on other people. But I still think there's places and spaces out there. And we have to, mandating it, it feels cringy. I don't know.
Well, let's just hope that they wake up someday.
It feels like a loophole to get out of. It feels like I'm gonna, how you feel about the gambling tax. The gambling tax goes to education, but we really just take all that money and put it in another bucket, and then it didn't really do anything. That's what that feels like it would become. I truly need people to want to change the system.
That's like my wife saying, I want you to want to do the dishes.
Exactly.
I don't want to do the dishes.
I want you to want to educate this country. That's what I want.
I'm not going to wake up and do that someday. Hey, I want to thank both of you for being on the show. This has been a great session. I'm sure this is well. Hey, if you're listening right now, I'm terrible at this. Boswell keeps telling me, hey, York, you need to push this. If you're listening to this, share this with a coworker. If you're listening to this podcast, share with people that you work with. Send them a link, send them a DM, email them, share that link. Our views are going up every single week. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. The last couple of weeks have been big numbers the last couple of weeks. So, hey, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Share with more people. Let's get this going. Let's get a sponsorship. Let's get, I don't know, a Secretary of Education to come on the show someday and say, yeah, we're going to put some regulations in. Hey, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Disrupt You. Have a question for the host? Just send that over to Dr. York via Twitter at Prof. D. York, and it could be featured on the show. We'll see you next week for another dive into the future of higher education.